I'm just going to talk about the soundtrack from The Mummy Returns. Spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the film. In particular, I always remember the scene where Rick is on the top of the double-decker bus driving over Tower Bridge. First thing that occurred to me this time was, oh, well, that's obviously the guy who does the Avengers theme tune. Listen to these two pieces next to each other. The composer is Silvestri, who seemed like the perfect guy for the job for this film, given its departure from the horror element of the first film. Returns is pretty much a full-blown cheesy action flick, much like the Avengers. Silvestri used a 100-piece orchestra and a 60-voice choir to give it that massive blockbuster feel. Imhotep's theme. This was originally written for the first film by master Jerry Goldsmith, different composer than Silvestri, in case you couldn't tell from those two different names that they have. The man wrote a ton of great music, some of the best of which is included on the soundtrack of the first Mummy film. It's Egyptian and epic. It's beautiful. Awesome. And it's very scary in parts. The first Mummy film is a much more serious and artistic film than the sequel, and the soundtrack reflects that. Moment of appreciation for Omid Jalili's death scene. In fact, I think the reason I probably looped Returns more than the first one is simply that Returns is not scary. It's just fun, and it leans a lot more into the comedy, whereas the first one would have me having nightmares while I'm trying to sleep. Back to Returns. Up to way, up to way. Let's talk about this Sandcastles track. Uncharted, anybody? Grave robbing, desert exploring treasure seekers have their own signature sound. Sandcastles has the adventurous percussion, that tasty Middle Eastern flavoured scale, evoking imagery of sand and all things Egypt. Plus the movement from the percussion makes it perfect for a scene where one group is chasing another across the desert. Straight across the desert to Karnak.
Straight across the desert to Karnak.
Then next we've got this We're in Trouble track. We're in trouble! We get the bus ride Avengers queue again, except it's bigger. Because this isn't a bus over Tower Bridge, this is a flying, rocket-powered hot air balloon flying away from a giant tsunami with the boss baddie's face in it. And then there's this moment towards the end of the chase. It's that same theme from the Sandcastles track, except instead of this adventurous hunt, now it's, we found it. The hunt is over. The next section I want to talk about is this heartbreaking section of Come Back Evie. Let's hear it. Here it comes. Woo! Goosebumps! I think that moment is the highlight of the whole soundtrack for me personally. Overwhelmingly beautiful devastation, where I think the real focus of the piece is actually Evie and Rick's love for each other. And then for the final boss fight, we get this.
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
The very first thing that I did after I finished this last rewatch was go to order a vinyl of the soundtrack, where I quickly discovered that they never released one. So I settled for a 2 CD special edition instead. A CD-shaped little package. Let's just do it. Let's go. Ciao. There it is. There are 32 extra pieces of music on this CD. If only I still owned a CD player. 2001, 25 years this has remained in the packaging, all to end with me. Right, yeah. Let's do this together, shall we? Ooh, hello. Music composed and conducted by Alan Silvestri. CD2, we've got Imhotep with his... What even is that? Let's get the booklet out. Ooh, it smells good. The Mummy Returns is one of my all-time favourite things, says composer Alan Silvestri. By the time we had finished making The Mummy, we had all these ideas for a sequel that would tell the story with a much larger canvas and feature the next generation of special effects. His protagonist pod expanded from Rick and Evie to include their young son, Alex. Alex, what's your language?
Alex, what's your language?
There's a whole storybook in here. I'm not going to read it all to you because I paid for the CD and you didn't. I hope that was enjoyable for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, all that same old bollocks. This was my first attempt at making a video of this nature. This was my first bus ride.
This was my first bus ride.